And I think a lot of times when people talk about career tracks, they talk about more generally what you want to do, such as you want to be a web developer, do you want to be a software engineer. But I think it's really important to talk about what exactly you want out of your career. So I came up with a short list of the two really general types of career track you can have. You can work for someone else, or you can work for yourself. What are some examples of where you would work for someone else? You have a corporation, government, sure. You have academia, nonprofit, startup. And when I say startup, I want to clarify that a startup can mean your own startup or someone else's startup. And when you work for yourself, what are some things you can do to have your career powered by you? Contracting, right? And freelancing, I guess you could call it that too. Your own apps, your own business. You could start your own business, right? Another thing you could do for yourself is a startup. There's a lot of stuff going on between these two because ultimately, even if you work for yourself, there's always one big thing in mind, and that's the client. It's someone you have to please. So you're never completely free, no matter what you do. So what are the pros and cons of working for someone else? What are some of the pros?
Benefits.
Benefits.
Usually stability.
Stability.
Learning curve. Learning different environment.
Mm-hmm. If you're at the beginning of your career, what are some advantages to working for someone else?
Skill building.
Exactly. Skill building. If you're lucky, you'll get into some sort of company where you have mentors, people who have years of experience, and hopefully there's someone you respect. And that is building upon your education. And a lot of times to get to this point where you're working for yourself, you need to have credibility, and you have to have proof that you know what you're doing. And that's why sometimes it's okay to freelance straight out of school, but most of the time, usually you need to have somebody vouching for your skills, and that is in the form of your resume and who you've worked for. Some other pros of working for someone else: they are going to worry about accounting. They're going to worry about how you get paid. They have a marketing department many times. So it's nice in a way when you work for someone else. You can focus on your research papers, you can focus on your coding, right, and you don't have to worry about how to get the next job. Are there any other advantages anybody can think of? Yeah.
Networking.
Networking, absolutely. Because if you're working for yourself, how are you going to meet people?
Right.
You're going to have to be very proactive about going out. You're going to have to go to meetups, friends of friends of friends, maybe. Conferences cost a lot of money if you want to go to good ones, right? Networking sometimes involves travel. You might want to go to conferences in different cities. I personally went this direction. I worked for someone else for almost 10 years, and then I moved to this direction. There's a graphic designer I really respect called Jessica Hish, and she worked in that same direction. She was working for a typesetting company, and then she had a great freelancing career. I find that this is more rare to go the other way. That's what Mark Zuckerberg did. He got at Facebook straight out of Harvard. He never really worked for anybody else. That's what worked for him. And I think that's great, but it's not for everybody. Some of the cons of working for someone else. Can anybody think of them?
Getting stuck there.
Stuck there. When you say stuck, do you mean same position, getting bored with it? Not being able to get another job?
Well, I started my own company and then went into corporate a few years ago, and right, being introduced to that culture and I'm gonna be here and do what they say, and I'm gonna go home and try and forget about today and then wake up tomorrow and do it again. Right. Was really shocking.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I worked from home for 12 years. So it was, and it wasn't one of those things that hit you in the face. It was a slow, it's like, wow, I love this here. And then I go and oh my God, I've been here 9 months.
Yeah.
And everything at home has died. And you don't realize that you're stuck until you look back.
Personally, that's how I felt too.
If you have an idea of something that you'd like to develop, you have to wait a certain amount of time. There's something that, and given that technology is so, it's just changing so constantly, unfortunately, depending on what you signed, you might not be able to develop that, and you will miss the window to create something that eventually somebody else jumps on, or the technologies will move past it by the time you're able to actually do it yourself.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you can get stuck doing something in a big company, such a narrow focus, that you don't feel like you're actually expanding your skills.
I was just going to say your time is not your own. Even if you're having a slow day and you really don't need to be there, you have to be there.
That's right.
And that is actually
Ultimately.
the most difficult part for me, is that you have to be there till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever the expectation is.
Yes. And I just had this conversation with Tarah, I think last night, about how we just feel like we're too old to have a boss. Sometimes it's advantageous. If I really feel like if the right position came up, I would, and I respected the boss. That to me is the biggest deal. If I have a boss, I want someone who has more knowledge than me and who's a better people person than me. And there has to be something about them that makes me think, wow, I can learn a lot from being around this person. Because you can always learn. You can learn until the day you die and you're 82 years old. But it's frustrating when you work for a boss and you think to yourself constantly, why is this person the boss instead of me?
I am too old to have a boss, but I think of that in terms of the fast food jobs I used to work when I was 15, 16, right? I'm too old to have somebody tell me if it's okay if I can go to the bathroom. I'm too old to have somebody tell me that I need to get my butt to work on time. I have better things to do than worry about a 5-minute gap there. And if I got caught in traffic because I was busy staying up all night last night working on your proposal, I don't want to hear about it. I'm too old at this point to deal with this. I'm not too old, I'm still 28. I'm too old to deal with that anymore, which means that if I do have a boss, it's because I've deliberately selected somebody that is more experienced and better than I am in all ways. And since that human being doesn't exist, I have no boss. So here's the real secret. You have bosses, colleagues, and subordinates. And in the tech world, there's a very special and weird thing that happens where they, at any point in your relationship, can be one, all, or all three of those things. One, both, or all three. Like I mentioned before, Mike has been my boss, my colleague, and my subordinate before. This is a very weird thing that happens in technology. And it's something I actually didn't get a chance to mention earlier in the welcome speech. Are the professors here, I haven't actually asked this question. Are you all being referred to by your first names by all of your students?
Sure.
Okay, I wanted to know about that because something that's a little bit odd in technology is not just the informality of personal relationships, but also the fact that you need to be careful to, that your boss, that your subordinates, that your colleagues, that you maintain good relationships with them, because these are the people that are going to pull you into new jobs. And the biggest thing that you need to know about getting a new job is that is usually your only chance to change your rate of pay, or change your experience level, or your set of skills. In tech, you're usually being hired to do one thing, and for a limited period of time. So when you're done with that thing, you're gone. Time to get the next job. So get your next pay raise when you switch companies, not within a company. There's no real way to do that. And as a contract worker, you've already signed up to do your job for a set period of time for a set amount of money. And on your contract renewal, it is highly unlikely that they will raise your rate of pay again.
Have something to add?
Sure.
I'd like to talk about moving from being a full-time employee to being a contractor, which is something that I've done and is one of the most terrifying things that I've ever done. It is really scary because you don't know if you're going to have a job next month. One of the things that you can do to help with this is when you are still a full-time employee, before you make that leap, make sure you've got, I'd say, a bare minimum of 3 months worth of living expenses. Really, you should have at least 6 months to a year saved up, completely available. That includes your deductibles for your car insurance, your deductibles for your health insurance if you're able to get it the rules are changing, so I'm not exactly sure what's gonna happen in the future with that. But make sure you have enough to cover basic medical expenses as well as your rent and food and whatever other expenses that you absolutely need. Internet is one of those, by the way. You have to have internet when you're job hunting. You can't be trying to go to the library unless you're homeless and try and find work, because you can't be there constantly. You need to be able to keep an eye on your email.
And if you left your job, that means you don't get unemployment.
Right. If you quit, you do not get unemployment. When you are a contractor, you save half the money you make. The reason for this is that you are saving ahead for your taxes, which you probably haven't planned for because you've never contracted before. Your tax rate is higher than you think it is. When you're a full-time employee, your company pays half your taxes. You've got to pay the whole thing when you're a regular employee. You've also got to pay the self-employment tax if you don't start an LLC. It's expensive.
Start an LLC.
You should start an LLC. They're not going to hire you as a contractor if you don't have an LLC. You can start it with a group.
It's the beard through which you're hired. It's the entity through which they deal with the paperwork.
LLC.
LLC.
Limited liability company.
In Washington, it's $200 worth every penny.
Another good thing is find a good CPA.
Yes. That is super helpful.
It saves a lot of tax.
Yeah, if you do start your own company as a contractor, you will want to get an accountant. You don't want to do that yourself. The accountant will save you money. It might cost $1,000 to get your taxes done, but you're going to end up saving money.
A lot.
The LLC also provides you with certain legal protections.
Yes, I will agree with that. I started at S Corp and now I learned my lesson.
I was going to mention, if you don't mind, every year in September, at Renton Botech, they have a Start Your Own Business. It's like a 2-day seminar, and they put you through all the ropes. Another good opportunity is a small business administration of every city has got a place where you can go in and you can get one-on-one classes and one-on-one training from former people who've been in business of various types who've come back to want to give to the community, and they'll talk to you about what it is your plans are to help you get your startup going.
Are we talking about starting your own business in a different session? Are we? Paperwork?
There's no real need to. I mean, yes, they've got the sessions and stuff, but the truth is, starting your own business, those kinds of seminars, from what I've seen, are for people who are looking to switch into some kind of service industry. These are for people who maybe like carpentry and want to figure out how to make furniture, who are in retail and maybe want to open their own shops. They're not really for technical people. For technical people, figure it out. Okay, go to the website, register your LLC online. Then you have a business. After that, get a CPA. After that, go get jobs, make money.
Right.
Run it through the CPA. There's no start your own business. Oh, actually, there is a couple of good things about start your own business. Your name for your company, okay? Ensure that it is unique and that you have the .com for that website.
And then it's not your name.
And then it's not
a lot
your
harder
name.
to sell it if it's your name.
Exactly. Don't make it your name, whatever it might be. Like my beard is Red Queen Technologies. I've got some assets and intellectual property under that name. So ensure, and on websites thing, always .com. Always ensure that you're getting the .com name, okay? Don't sacrifice, don't subsidize, don't think it's okay to get the .net, get the .com.
Yes.
Also, get the domain before you decide your name.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing to do is have one or two other people look at your domain before you buy it.
Oh, yeah.
The perfect example of this is Experts Exchange. It used to have a dash in it.
Expert sex
Experts
change.
Exchange.
Oh, no, it's expert sex change. It's what it is. I wanted to register.
Dash in it now.
Yeah, I wanted to register this site. I think it was 2 nights ago, and I'm like, Liz, I need you to be my eyes on this domain name. And what it was it was this concept that I had to do like a film noir con, and I was going to call it fatalcon.com, right? And she looked at it, and she was like,
It starts with fat.
actually, it looks like Fat Alec on. That's what it looks like.
Which is probably how people would pronounce it.
Fat Alecon. So they would never say Fatalcon.
Just have somebody else look it over.
There is.
If you don't mind, I had one thing to add about earlier.
Oh,
You were
sure.
talking about the
Yeah.
Zuckerberg model.
Yes.
One thing about that model that Paul Graham is actually really huge on is the concept of going to get a master's or PhD with the goal of starting a company and meeting people who can help you do that. If you go get a degree like that, you're going to meet people from all walks of life, and some of them will be very well off and able to fund your company. They will also be able to help you start your company, and many of them will already have MBAs or some other business ability. So That's kind of what he did. He got together with people who had this ability. It's easier to do when you're in college. And if you apply to Y Combinator, one of the things they look for is that you've at least started a master's program. Everybody knows what Y Combinator is, right?
Go find out what it is.
Yeah. You want to know what Y Combinator is. You guys are perfect.
Can I talk about degrees really quickly?
Okay.
Okay. I have a master's degree, and it doesn't matter what my master's degree is in. Really doesn't. What matters is that it can check the box off in human resources. When they say master's degree preferred but not required, what they mean is master's degree required because it's the person who gets that job is going to have a master's degree. Okay, that's the fact. All right. They say bachelor's degree is required or additional experience. Then you're okay with just a bachelor's. Get your master's degree. It is cheap. It's worth it. You can do it in 1 year full time or 2 years half time at night. Okay, but you are limiting yourself greatly in the number of jobs that you can get and can be promoted to if you do not have a graduate degree of some kind.
Years of experience is usually 7 to 10.
Yes.
So commensurate experience to a master's degree would be a bachelor's degree plus 7 to 10 years of experience.
Instead of 1 year of a master's degree.
Or you started your
That's
own
serious.
company and sold it.
Well, if you started your own company and sold it, then you're good to go. You can start your own company again and just keep doing it because that's awesome because that's what we do. Your degrees are going to be very important. Also maintain, like Liz said, your ties in academia. And it's not just because you want to be able to meet people from all walks of life. It is also because having a professor say that your idea sounds good to venture capitalists is primo. It is gold because what it means, people have a great deal of respect for somebody who is a doctor. I swear I'm going to finish my PhD here anytime soon. My PhD is going to be in complex systems and conflict theory. So this is people just have this automatic respect for somebody who's called doctor, and they do. And if you can get somebody who has doctor in front of their name to say that your idea sounds good to venture capitalists, you are already a lot further along than most other people would be. Maintain those ties in academia if you've got them, okay?
When you say a graduate degree is cheap, are you speaking of some sort of an online degree, or are you speaking of face-to-face?
That's a good question.
I think that is too. I think she meant not full-time at a,
It's
not
cheap
fully
in
enrolled.
comparison to not having it. Oh. Okay, yeah, it's cheap in comparison to not having it. Don't ask about my student loans. No, but it's cheap in comparison to not having it. It's cheap in comparison to where I would have been in my career had I not gotten one. All right? So I simply would not have gotten at least 3 of the opportunities that I can think of now if I didn't have a master's degree. I would not almost certainly have been hired at Microsoft. So, because everybody's got a master's degree at this point. College degrees are cheap, and master's degrees are even cheaper. And I don't mean in terms of money, I mean in terms of the time they save you in your career to get to the point where you're making money.
That seems to be true if you plan to stay in Washington, particularly in the Seattle area, but maybe not if you're willing to move to, say, the Midwest
It's
or...
true everywhere.
One of the points about moving to the Midwest for a job is that you don't want to get trapped in a town you can't afford to move out of. A lot of those towns have a very limited number of companies that actually have the tech industry with them. And if you end up at one of those companies and you don't like it after a month, can you afford to move back?
Right.
Right. It's not just that, it's also the cost of living that you're used to as well, too. So saving up money to move from a small city into a large city is going to take you longer. So your expenses are going to be lower in a smaller town, but that also means that your salary is going to be lower. It's another one of the reasons why you never ever say what your original salary was on your resume anywhere.
And credentials are good and experience, because regardless of whether you're working for yourself, I think a lot of people tend to think, well, I'm working for myself, I don't need a master's degree to get the job. The truth is that when you're trying to get a client, they want to know that you're qualified. And a lot of times they'll want to brag, oh, I got this woman, she has a PhD. Of course she's qualified to do this job, designing my website.
But she's got a PhD, so she got the job. And then she can learn really quick.
Now,
That's never happened to
you
me.
can not have a master's or PhD if you do have experience. However, I will tell you, I know 2 people who never graduated from college who have great jobs, like amazingly great jobs, but
They can't get out of them.
No. One dropped out of high school, and he became the CEO of Blip. And the other one, he dropped out of college, and he just happens to get into the industry at the right time. So there are exceptions, but I don't advocate them because they are exceptions. They're not the rule. And it's, in my opinion, much easier if you go for the master's. You pay the money, you get back the money. and it's a shortcut, because you will have to have at least 10 years experience to get to the point where you're viewed the same as someone with a master's.
In addition, that's the extra tick mark that can help as a female when you're in competition. So it's a situation when you've got 5 people in a lineup, 3 of them have bachelor's, 2 of them have master's degrees. The 3 with bachelor's really aren't even being considered at that point anymore, unless there is some kind of weird nepotistic connection. The 2 who have master's degrees, if they're both dudes, one of them's getting the job. Okay.
I had a quick question. I'm a recent college graduate, and I'm going to start grad school in winter, but I'm just wondering what should I be doing in the meantime, because I have a degree in math. Like, I don't have a tech degree. Like, I'm going to go for my MSCIS in January, but I'm just wondering what should I try to do.
What was your thesis in?
My thesis was in Sudoku, and the mathematics behind it.
Have you written a Sudoku game?
Yes.
Is it out there in public where other people can see it? Is it on GitHub?
No.
Do that. That's your thing.
Well, another alternative that might be time saving, because I know school is really tough. It can really drain your time and your energy. Is start a blog and gain a following, so that when you have this application that you've written maybe 2 years from now, you can either have a book or you can have an application that will instantly have a fan base. Because ultimately, when you want to write something of your own, you want to have a fan base, you want to have someone to sell it to. And I love your story. I mean, that sounds really cool. Sudoku thesis, I already would want to read your blog.
You definitely want to talk about that whenever you go to a job interview.
That's kind of awesome.
It's
Honestly.
really
It really
awesome.
is.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
And that following that she's talking about, much more important in startups and in doing your own work in consulting. So you need to have the startups to, not just to spread your idea, but also these are the people that, not to put it crassly, but they're the ones you're making money off of. They're the ones who are going to buy your book, who are going to buy your game and pay for the premium version of the application. They're your first people. They're your beta testers. They're your fans. Everybody in here better have at least 2 or 3 fans. Go get some.
Yeah.
Looking, just about to finish at Seattle Central and thinking about grad school at this point. I was thinking about getting a job.
In between?
So,
Or at the same time?
together.
You bet.
All right.
You're not going to give either one of them your full capacity, and you won't do as well in either one of them as you would have done had you done them alone.
Your grades will probably be lower in your master's. I worked full-time
But
and
do
part-time
them
while I
both
was
at the
getting
same
my
time is
bachelor's
what you're
degree, and
saying.
my numbers went down.
No.
Because there's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with that, because, and I forgot to point this out earlier on the resume
Nobody cares
thing.
what your grades are. Don't put it on
If
there.
you apply for a job at a university, put your GPA on your
Yes.
resume.
But
It's
other
the only
than that-
time you need it.
Other than that, take it off. No
Yeah, you
GPA.
don't need your GPA.
No, I
And
wouldn't put
if your
my-
main focus is to just get the degree, then I think you'll be fine working while you're getting the degree.
I have
But if
never
you
been
really
asked.
want to have that GPA,
Well, I love
become
school,
academic.
but
I've never had anyone ask me what my GPA is.
Just be aware when you go for your master's, a lot of what's going to be involved is meeting in the evening to work on your projects, and make sure you're able to do that while you're working.
Yeah, grad school is not show up for just the classes. It is very unlike what your experience would have been in undergraduate. You don't get to show up and do your classes and go home and be done with it and then go to your other job. Graduate school is expect to spend approximately 10 times per, 7 to 10 times the amount of time on each individual class that you would spend in class. So if you spend 3 hours in a class, expect to spend approximately 20 to 25 hours on external preparation and doing the work for that class. For graduate school, you're going to have a stack of books to read for each class that's going to be about to hear from the ground. Okay? So learn to read fast, get a speed read. Okay, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff later.
Right.
But do a speed reading class if you don't already read at an insanely fast rate. In fact, do it anyway because it's just going to make you faster. All right? But do your graduate degree right after college if you can. You won't go back and get it done. It's not going to happen, dude.
What about if instead whole degree do the mock classes, the massive online courses, like Stanford has them?
Oh, the degree classes?
Yeah.
You can put those on your resume.
Yeah.
And they'll give you I did the original AI class, and they give you a certificate
Yeah.
once you finish the class, so you have proof that you took it.
Yeah. Still not a degree.
No, it's not a degree,
Yeah,
and it's
but-
not the
but
same
it's
as a
good.
degree. But if it's something you're interested in, and you've got the time to just take one class, it's not a bad way to go.
It's not
I
even-
had a lot of fun in that class, and I learned stuff
Yes.
about statistics that I didn't learn in college. I've got 27 math credits.
And if you
You
don't,
can pick and choose. That's what I like. You can pick and choose.
and not only is it not a bad idea, it's an awesome idea. It shows that you're willing to continue learning after you're done with your degrees. That's amazing. And plus, para-degree subjects and things like that, if you say, you know what, I'm also going to do a class in neuroscience.
Yes.
That doesn't make you bad at your job, it makes you better at it for having more information. Okay, folks, this is actually really exciting. I don't know, John, can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, perfect. That's because I'm a loudmouth. John Callis is a security god, would be a polite and underspoken way to put it, okay? This is a guy who has done talks at DEF CON for years and years. He helped to create the GPG system, the PGP system. This is a guy who worked with Bruce Schneier. Schneier is one of the security gods as well, and these folks have done everything in security. When I say security, do you know what I'm talking about? In just a minute, you will. Security is one of the most uber-doodly fields in software development, okay? We are talking hacking, penetration testing, and security measures for all corporations. For yours, you may decide to do security development on your own, and this is the guy that's going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to let him do most of the talking here, believe it or not, and so we're going to let him introduce himself and give you some introductory comments. Liz, do you want to follow up with anything? Oh,
yes, if you have a question, please step up to the computer so he can see you and hear you clearly.
Yeah, you're going to step up here and line up as you have questions with the camera right here, and he'll be able to see you right in there. So, yeah. So, John, please tell us about yourself, and I know you had some introductory remarks ready to go.
Okay, yeah. I want to leave a lot of time for question and answer, so I thought about some things to say, and I'll go through them as quickly as I can. If I talk a little too fast, I apologize. The first thing that I want to say is that when you look at events that happen, when you look forward into the future, it's all confusion and nothing is certain. But when you look backwards, history is certain. It looks like there was only one way that things could happen, when in fact it wasn't that way when it did there. History's one way, the future's the other way. Now, hold on to that for a moment, because there's a reason that I said that. A couple of years ago, I was talking to Alma Witten at a conference that we were at. Alma is the Chief Privacy Officer at Google. She worked on a number of security and human factors things, wrote some of the absolutely amazing basic papers on it. And we were talking about getting women into computers, tech, etc. And I was saying, how do I do it? Because all the women that I knew from when I was younger are very senior now. They're vice presidents, senior architects, et cetera, and I just didn't have the contacts to do things. And I was wondering why she thought that things weren't going the way that seemed inevitable years ago. Among the many things that she said that were very smart, one of them is that when you learn what you're supposed to do, when you learn about a track about what you're supposed to do, which is going on here, you're implicitly give the message that if you fall off the track, it's hard to get back on. And this is the furthest thing from the truth. Many of the best people in this business came through the roundabout path. I know lots of people who had, their degrees are in Russian history, classics, so on and so forth. They came in through the side door. And computers in general, security a lot now, is really open to that. You hear about the right way to do things with a grain of salt, because what you need is the right way to do things for you, and it may not be what we said. And that the bad happened to you may turn out to be the best things that ever happened to you. I'm a displaced musician. I don't normally talk about that. I actually don't really like talking about myself at all. I hate doing resumes. I hate doing bios for myself, and it's just part of what I am. I was, when I was a kid, something of a prodigy musician. I was a symphony musician. A lot of people who wanted me to go to the Sorbonne to learn to play in an orchestra, and I disappointed a lot of people when I decided that I didn't want to do that. I ended up getting, for a number of reasons, degree in math and philosophy. I also had side jobs doing computer programming, system management, stuff like that. not only paid well, but it was a lot of fun. And I spent most of my career knocking around doing things that I thought were fun at the time. I traded jobs probably every couple of years. Even though I'll speak up a little bit, I hear an ear being cupped, see an ear being cupped, that I worked for Digital Equipment Corporation for 13 years, traded jobs every 2 or 3 years. I also found new things to do constantly, and that's one of the things that when you look back on my career, when I write it up, history looks like it is inevitable, but going forward it wasn't that way at all. Mm-hmm. At one time I had multiple copies of my resume. There was me as the programmer, me as the this, me doing collaboration work, graphics, whatever, and I sent these out often tailored to the job that I thought that I would want. Your resume is an avatar. Mm-hmm. I stole that a bit from Sherry Turkle, who stole it from one of the people that she was interviewing for her latest book, which is called Alone Together. I highly recommend all of her books, including, maybe especially for your purposes, some of the early ones, like On the Screen and so on, when she talks about hard mastery and soft mastery of skills.
John, can you repeat the name again?
Her name is Sherry Turkle, right. T-R-K-L-E. She is professor of sociology at MIT, and that tells you about what a unique person she is. Your avatar, it is a projection. It has to be accurate. I mean, the details on there, people will check up on, and that will happen if they're not accurate. But the truth of your resume is a story. It's an avatar. It is a costume. It's a pose, and you can use the fact that history is different to tailor it to what you need at the time, and then eventually, you sort of settle down into one thing. And it's a cliche, but the best things to do are the things that you enjoy. When I was a musician, one of the things that they said was that if you go into music, and it's also true for work, sort of half-hearted, you won't become a star. Because the people who are obsessive about it, the people who enjoy it, the people who think about it, will beat you every time. So it is a cliche that you need to do what you love, and the reason you need to do what you love is that you'll put your heart into it, and no matter what it is, you'll excel at it. I have been in security for a while, but the reason that I've stayed in it is that the real thing that I like is the way that people interact with each other using computers as a medium. Security is all about the rough edges of that. It's all about what you should be allowed to do, what you shouldn't be allowed to do, what rules shouldn't even exist at all. And the fact that it really is all about the hard human questions is one of the reasons why I stuck with it. There's no one thing that is security. It covers a wide range of sub-disciplines. If you want me to talk about what some of those are, I can later, but that's why I've done it. And I'll stop now and let somebody ask me another question.
Hey, John. This is Tara. I wanted to ask you if you could maybe start. Let's do a quick two-part question. First, what is life like as a hacker? And second, who's the kind of person who's going to enjoy life as a hacker? What do you do for a career, and what's the best personality fit and type and situation for it? And then we'll have everybody start lining up to ask questions after that.
Okay, that's really great. There is something that is called the security mindset. Bruce Schneider about this, and other people have. If you are the sort of person who wonders, what happens if I do that? Why does it work that way? If you have a combination of a healthy disrespect for rules then you make a good hacker. If you want to break things, if you want to find out what's going on inside it, those things are all about what hacking is. The personality that you ought to have is that you like taking things apart. You like getting a surprise. You like worming around things, but you also are on the side of the angels at the same time.
Most of the time, right, buddy?
Well, in a true hacking competition, for example, there's been philosophical discussions of how do you break the rules in a hacking competition.
Pretty much. So, who has questions? Come on up. Go ahead and tell John the name and ask a question right by staring in here.
Okay. Hi, my name's Amy. I was just wondering what a good way is to get involved with the hacking community.
Good question.
The best thing that I can say is find some people in a relatively small group that you can hang around with. There are a number of small conventions that are regional conventions that I know that are around. In Seattle, for example, there's TourCon and TourCamp. Con is in many ways one of the worst places that you can go because it's one big party and it's completely unbounded. That everybody who comes gets to come in, so it means that it's very hard to get into the talks, that there's lots of people in the hallways, it's hard to meet anyone, but it's also, one big party and you never know what you will find out there. Smaller ones I think are better, particularly if you're someone who's an introvert. I think that if you manage to do things on the net, like IRC channel, lurking around, talking to people who say things that you think are interesting, having the guts maybe to email someone and say, gosh, that was an interesting thing you said, but just start talking to people, just start showing up. One of the ways that you can get into any new discipline is starting to show up at a lot of the events that happen. There are also local societies like ISSA, which is the International Security Something Association, where they will be more professional people who are involved in banks and industry, healthcare, this, that, the other thing, and they will be worried about the actual work deployments, how you do things, going to those and just meeting them. When you start showing up, you start becoming a fixture and people start assuming that you know something.
Next questions, come on up and just line up over here.
Hey, John, while we're getting some more people lined up, I was kind of wondering something that you could maybe expand on there for me. As you mentioned, the showing up and finding people to hang out with. The reason Liz and I are part of the security community at all really is because we got a chance to go to DEF CON and just sort of opened our faces up during Lost's opening talk and said, how do a couple of web developers get on some of these hacker teams? So can you talk about the importance of groups in security, not just that image of the lone hacker sitting alone?
There are actually relatively few lone hackers. It's a stereotype, it doesn't exist. I mean, that most of the security groups and other people, cryptographers, for example, are amazing gossips. I mean, dear God, if there is a cryptographic discovery that happens within like 48 hours, half the people in the world will know about it. And similarly, hackers like to talk. And thus, get on a mailing list, lurk, listen to what's going on. That's what I always do. I spend a lot of time lurking, and then you sort of wait until you put in the, this is a good comment. Like everything, listening is important. You learn more by listening than you do by talking.
Okay, thanks, John. We got the next question. Come on up. Remember to say your name. Right in.
Hello, John. This is Adriana, and my question is about how young can somebody be to get in? Like a 10-year-old, is that safe? And how can be kept away from the dark side?
There was at last DEF CON an absolutely amazing track that was DEF CON Kids. Chris Hoff, who is one of the really good guys in the field, has some relatively small children, and he put together about 6 tracks of material for the kids. They had both the EFF and the NSA there with stuff to help the kids. So, you know, that was really nice.
EFF and NSA for these folks here is?
National Security Agency.
And EFF is?
Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Electronic Frontier Foundation. So essentially the 2 groups on Earth that basically combust time and space if they exist in the same room together. Okay?
So, you know, there is the aspect of the dark side of it, but the main thing to learn is emotional and social grounding, and that's really hard for kids to learn, but it's also kind of easy as well. You know, it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to hurt people, but on the other hand, rules are made to be broken. And there are lots of things where the rule is there as sort of side guards rather than a wall. And that's hard to learn, but that's what you need to do.
Hi, this is Elaine. You mentioned earlier about your resume being your avatar and it being sort of your history, but are you still mentioning like we need to tailor resumes for each job, or is there just one resume that completely represents us? I just wanted you to elaborate more on that point.
It depends on what you want to do. I mean, my resume has stabilized into one thing over the years. But when I was younger and wanting to improve myself in terms of jobs and whatever, I would look at something that I wanted to apply for and would tailor my resume so that it would look like I might fit things. When you see a job description that people are looking for, that's sort of like the perfect candidate that nobody could possibly fit. I mean, you know, you'd have to have 100 years of experience to do that. Frequently, you will also see things that are impossible, like, you know, somebody who would have, 10 years experience with HTML5. There is no such thing as 10 years of experience with HTML5. And when you can start detecting those, you sort of laugh and you put it that way. It depends upon what you want to do. If you are a QA person who wants to get into coding, for example, that was one of the things that was on the website. You do QA things that require you to do coding, and then make sure those are on your resume, and also put those as the first sentence in the paragraph when you talked about your QA. That's part of it being the avatar that you tailor, and it's accurate, but there is different truths. You can say first, I did a lot of automated testing, or you can say first, I wrote the automated testing tools. And whichever one you say first, the person who's looking at your resume is going to read it fast. They're going to spend less than 5 minutes on it, often less than 2 on your resume. They're skimming down it looking for things that they want. And so it's an avatar, it's an advertisement.
So John, I was going to ask a question, if you can elaborate on this as well. On the typical career paths for a hacker or security specialist, some of the things that we've seen women have to deal with in the past is that the positions that they end up being kind of directed off into are often a little lower prestige and lower paid. And security tends to be the highest paid, the most prestigious, the most noticeable profession out there. And it's sometimes not as welcoming, I think, to women. And I'm wondering, first, is there a way to mitigate that for women who are just coming into security? And second, do you see that kind of changing over time?
I think it's changing. I think it's changing now. People that I know who are into it, there's friends/colleagues that I know who run one of the best security testing and just all around consulting organizations in the world for more women. It used to be a long time ago that there was no such thing as a computer science degree. When I graduated from college, there were probably only a half dozen universities in the world that had a computer science degree, and so everybody came from somewhere else. And view the regularization as a good trend, and similarly, I don't like the tendency towards accreditations in security to be good. Security people tend to be, like tech people of old, misfits. They've got chips on their shoulders. They often don't have a terribly high opinion of themselves. They're prickly introverts, and understanding how to get past that is a bit of an art, but you're not the only one who has to deal with this. My mother, who is an impressive, groundbreaking woman, had a bit of advice a long time ago where she said that there's a lot of people in the world who don't feel good about themselves any other way than dragging other people down. And these people will use whatever hook that they can use on you, whether you're a woman, fat, skinny, you name it. They will try to drag you down, and part of what you have to do is to not let it bother you, to not let those hooks get into you. Lots of gruff people turn out to be just fine once you stand up to them. And, not flinching is the best way to stand up to them. You don't have to, not fighting back is usually a good thing, but, taking it in stride, which, oh, believe me, that's hard. I mean, really, I was a new kid my whole life. I know how hard that is. But that's a way to get through it. They are welcoming once you get past it, even more so. I might be wrong on some of it. I'm not a woman. I don't get those sorts of things. I don't approve of the way that lots of people treat women, but because I'm not one, it has a tendency to not be done around me because I'm reasonably public in my not approving of it. I hope that answered the question.
Hi, it's Liz again. We've been throwing the word hacker around, and that definitely has negative connotations in the news. And I was wondering if you might elaborate a little bit on the difference between the hackers we hear about in the news and real hackers.
Okay. The term hacker first it came from the people in MIT and Stanford and a few other places where a hacker is someone who makes furniture with an axe. A hack is something that's thrown together. A hack is something that has surprising things to it. So there was also the idea of what was called hack value, that you might do a stunt and you might do it for its hack. For example, a bunch of my friends in the Shmoo group, they used to do really great stunts for DEF CON and other conferences. And one friend of mine built a Wi-Fi directional antenna that's called a Yagi antenna, and he put it inside on a tripod with a rifle stock on it and spray painted it black and so on. And this was done wholly for the hack value. It was just an antenna that was a directional antenna, but it was done intentionally to provoke. The thing that those of us who are the security professionals have learned is that frequently security problems that are theoretic don't get noticed until you actually manifest them. So we might know that it's possible for somebody to do blah, 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 and the reason that you might do it is also for the hack value, for the hack. And hackers started acquiring now, over 20 years ago, the negative connotations. When I was younger, often used with the term "just a" in front of it, like, are you a software engineer or are you just a hacker? And a hacker was someone who threw things together, who made furniture with an axe, not someone who designed them and tested them and did them. The days when the internet was young and people explored on it and people tested stuff and they jiggled the doorknobs and so on, that's when hackers started getting the negative connotations. There's no way to take the negative connotations back. You just have to learn with it. There are people who've tried to talk about white hackers and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The polite term is security researcher. The Shmoo Group, which puts on ShmooCon in Washington, D.C. that I'm with, we call ourselves an independent security think tank rather than a hacker group.
Hi, John. I had a quick question.
What's your name?
My name's Delina, but I usually go by V. Since I know a different language and I went over to China and they have a lot of variants of software, for instance. I was wondering what the security is with software or just things of a different language. It's like, a hacker using a variant of an axe, so it's not quite the axe, but it's still a sharp weapon, for instance. So how does security breaches go in terms of different languages?
They're all the same.
Okay.
Your skills will be very useful. The fact that you could read Chinese will be very useful because an awful lot of the bad hacking that is going on now is in fact industrial espionage being done by one major nation state against various of the others. Chinese do it. I mean, I am not saying this as a value judgment. The way that the Chinese look at it is that they have been oppressed by the West for over a century. They've had lost centuries because of the Opium Wars, so on and so forth. They're coming into their own, and they are absolutely going to get ahead. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, the United States was the rogue country that didn't respect other boundaries. So, if you're here and you want to work in security and you can read Chinese, that would be very useful because there's lots of hacker code out there that's got Chinese comments in it.
Hello, John. My name is Deborah. My question is, I believe you said something that you did not really appreciate the trend toward accreditation in security. I'm wondering specifically about people who are still in school trying to move forward. What do you think about CISSP, Security Plus, things of that nature?
A very good friend of mine who is a woman in security, she got in, by the way, she has a PhD in astrophysics, and she ended up in computer security. Talk about another coming in through the side door. She ended up with two sets of business cards, one with her CISSP on it, one without. I don't like the accreditation because I don't like things being essentially like concrete setting into a set of acceptable, this is the way that it goes, and so on and so forth. I have the opinion of CISSP that it is for itself mostly a money-making thing. They have this, you need to do a lot of tests. The tests are often flat out wrong. I know that the cryptography questions in many of them are just flat out wrong, and they're wrong in sort of the way that SAT questions are wrong, only more vicious, where 2 or 3 of the answers are conceivably true and none of them are very good. I don't like the fact that they have the continuing education requirements, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I have a mathematics degree. I got it in 1980. You know, it's now 2012. You can look at my resume and decide how much of a mathematician I still am. If you get a CISSP or anything else, you can decide through somebody's work experience, through references and so on. I view the continued testing as just a way for them to make money for themselves. Now, on the other hand, if you're trying to break in, you may grit your teeth and say, I need to do this because I need to do this. I mean, just like the reason you get a college degree is that's the ticket into a lot of jobs. Computers and security are one of the very few places in the world where you don't have to have a degree, but it still really helps a whole lot. And you might decide that you need it, but grit your teeth. I don't like them.
John, we've got one final question, and we'll ask you for some final remarks before we feed these hungry folks. Here comes the last question.
Hey, John, thank you for your time. I wanted to ask a question about, we hear and we see all over the place vulnerabilities being exposed, and sometimes there are groups that literally, the moment they find something that's wrong, they publicize it to the point that it almost seems like they're making it worse than better, because they're publicizing something that they really, in my mind, should have gone to whoever the stakeholder was and let them know what was going on. So what's your view on the idea of finding vulnerabilities as a career? I mean, isn't that how a black hat becomes a white hat? So any feelings about that part?
Well, for example, I hire people to break my stuff. Many of the people who do these things are doing it as essentially marketing for themselves. Charlie Miller, who's one of the guys who's won Pwn to Own for many years and so on and so forth, I hired him to test PGP things. And this was before he was famous. There is something called responsible disclosure, and I believe in responsible disclosure, but I also understand that there are irresponsible providers. There are people that you bang on the door and they don't listen to you, they don't fix things. I could give stories about how the only way that things got fixed after 3, 4, 5, 6 years was because they became publicized. And there is no right, there is no wrong. Ideally, yes, you would go to these people and they would do something about it. And when that doesn't happen, then the real world meets the theory. And then figuring out what is right for the world, especially if you know that the bank is using it.
All right, John, if we can ask you for some final comments or last encouragement, that would be awesome.
Yeah. That I had thought that I wanted to talk about. It said that one of the reasons why women continually don't get paid as well as men is that they don't negotiate their salaries very well. Mm-hmm. And oh man, I suck at this. I mean, I understand completely. I have no idea how to do it. The way that I have done it over my career is trade up. When I spent 13 years working for the same company, I did not make what I should have been making. I spent 2 or 3 or 4 years, every time somebody offered me a job or I would do one that would pay me 10% more, I would take it. I only feel a little bad that don't fall in love with your job. Your job will not requite your love. I did that once. I learned my lesson. It's a business relationship. They're paying you a fair day's work, fair day's pay for a fair day's work. You get paid better somewhere else. If you don't like what's going on, if you're shunted off into a place where you think that you're in a low prestige job, find somebody who will do it and leave. Don't reward people for treating you badly. And
John, thank you so much. These ladies have had an opportunity, and gentlemen as well, to learn from one of the greats in the field. We are deeply grateful that you got a chance to do this. So thank you very much. All right.
I mean it. It sounds silly, but no, really, I am quite honored, and thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much, John. Have a great day.
Thanks, John.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you to our Kickstarter backers, Michelle Thigpen, Annabelle Richard, Tech Liminal, and Adria Richards. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all of our Kickstarter backers. We couldn't have done this without you. Thank you.